Hello, Earthlings. Welcome to another episode of Originz. My name is Matt Worldly, and we are recording live from Denver, Colorado. This is the greatest city in the entire world. If you're wondering why, figure it out for yourself. Well, let me just tell you why. Because in Denver, you can come here and you can be whatever you want. Some people say, Denver doesn't have an identity. It's like, well, that's great. And if you don't have an identity, you can come to Denver and be anything you want. That's what's beautiful about Denver, is it's this ecosystem of opportunity. And believe it or not, I came here with this crazy ass dream, and I'm officially living this dream. I work 2 days a week, I body paint, I have this crazy laboratory, and it all came from somewhere. It wasn't just came to be. You know, my parents didn't just buy this shit for me. I literally worked for every single thing in this entire laboratory. I didn't work hourly. No, I went out and I made every single dollar count so that I could build this dream. So that's why Denver is the greatest city in the whole world. So welcome, everybody. You are welcome to Denver. You're welcome to this laboratory. Just hit me up and I'll give you a tour sometime. I'll give you a private show. All right, I mean that. Now, let's get into it. Today we're talking about a piece of artwork called Lost in the Obvious. And this is me. I finished this piece of artwork, I think back in March of 2013 or 2014. I'll give you the dates all in order in just one moment. But this is me, and I'm very proud because I finished this work of art, and I had a lot to say when I made this work of art. I had so much to say, and this artwork embodies everything that I had to say, which is ultimately that the world is not what we've been told, and we are swimming in corruption, and the fall of mankind seems to be just right around the corner. And that's kind of what this artwork is. It's a man, it's a person, it's a being, it's a ruin, and it's falling through space. And each one of its limbs are the reason why it's falling through space. Corruption, greed, slavery, genocide, nuclear warfare. It's all here, resting on this beautiful foundation that we call life. Now, we are going to talk about this artwork, but first, let's talk about what we learned in the previous episodes of Originz, because it's all going to connect to this one right now. And if you got goosebumps in the previous episodes, well, prepare to get more goosebumps now. In the previous episodes of Originz, what have we learned? Well, we have learned that the number 147 follows me around. It seems to be my cosmic signal, my cosmic number that calls upon me, or that, you know, drops a line whenever it wants to let me know that I'm aligned. You know, that I'm right on track. That as I'm trying to uncover this mystery, that the pieces are falling like dominoes. And 147 says, keep going. Keep going. Did I know this at the beginning? Absolutely not. This is a picture of my CD that I was listening to, Fever Ray, that had just stopped on 0147. You can see the play button is still on, so I didn't pause this. And I documented this because this number has been following me around for quite some time. So this picture was taken back in 2009. Now let's flash forward to 2012, when I went to a Pretty Lights concert and took a picture of the countdown at 1 minute and 47 seconds. Well, after the concert, my phone broke, and the only numbers that were visible were 1, 4, 7, and 0, the same numbers that were there on the Jumbotron counting down to Pretty Lights performance. So a couple days later, I was transferring some data and found out that Pretty Lights' first album, oh, look at that, just happens to be 147 megabytes. So that's a recap of what we learned in the first episode. In the most recent episode of Originz that I posted, we learned about this special place in the forest that I call the Eye. And I would go there a lot with my dog. And based on the pretty lights experience and this crazy number popping up in my life, I knew that I had to be in this very spot at 1:47 p.m. on 4/7, April 7th of like 2014 or something. And sure enough, as soon as the clock struck 1:47, this giant beam of light came down through the trees and a blue light appeared in front of it, almost saying, "Stand in this light, Matthew. Stand right here in this light." So I did. And in that moment, I felt everything. I felt the universe dancing on my face, every particle, atom, and cell of the universe. I felt it dancing on my face, and something told me, "Matt, you need to go home and you need to draw right fucking now." And I fought that feeling. I fought that feeling because I was actually working on this piece of artwork, Lost in the Obvious. And at the time, I never worked on two pieces of art at once. It was always one at a time, so I was very hesitant. But the beauty that I learned about escúchame, which means listen to me in Spanish, I learned that all the things that my soul was like crying out for, that wanted to be said, I said it in Lost in the Obvious. But the beauty is that this was my soul crying out in that moment, saying, "Listen to me, I have so much to say. I have so much to tell you about my experiences in the world and what I have learned." So, that's a little brief recap of the previous Origin episodes. There's a lot of magic in the air right now. So, let's continue. Let me just say that Lost in the Obvious is essentially part of my, what I like to call, Great Awakening. It's when I just started to see the world differently. The experiences that I was having, let's say, call it a divine intervention, was ultimately telling me to pay attention to what's right in front of me and to simplify reality. That reality is not complex, it's not complicated, but that it's actually simple and profound. So I felt that on my quest of these crazy experiences that I was having with this number and tying it all together, the universe was saying, keep it simple. Try not to overthink this, but really just pay attention to what's right in front of you and see what you uncover. So I did. And when I say that Lost in the Obvious was my Great Awakening, this is what I mean. I started to see the world in a very different way. And here are some examples, okay? I started to see that these religious aspects and these fast food and these corporations, these car companies, they all were using symbols that were a derivative of, what is this, like the Great Tetrahedron, you know what I mean? Correct me if I'm wrong, whatever. But here it is. Walmart, Jack in the Box, the Jewish religion, Christianity, Carl's Jr., Mercedes-Benz, VW, all these shapes that they use as logos and for their brands are all derived from this shape. How about that? Let's continue. I started seeing things, like, think about this. If they're willing to go that far to advertise, what else are they willing to do? So I started seeing, like, for example, this is the Pizza Hut logo, right? Well, Pizza Hut. Was pizza, like, ever in a hut? Is that where pizza arrived from? Like, what does that even mean? So I took away the Pizza Hut, and I just came up with the hut. And to me, I just saw a UFO. I started to see the question mark as not just a question mark, but more of an outline of a person that is perhaps looking up to the sky and questioning life. I started to notice, that the number 4, if you reflect it, it kind of turns into this symbol, which is ultimately the base for I and Lost in the Obvious, which we're going to talk more about in a second. But you can see this shape here. See the correlation? We'll get more into that later. But here's another example. When the universe says, simplify life, stop overthinking it, well, then I would look at a bird's footprint and say, wait a minute, if I drew a circle around this, it's a freaking peace symbol. wait a minute, if I flip this upside down, it's a person kind of with their arms in the air. And I just gave it a nice smiley face. And then, who knows? This is just my opinion. I don't hate God, I don't hate Jesus or anything, but I do recognize that there is a lot of manipulation and malarkey that goes on to influence the general population. And you can see that like positive and negative is everything that really makes up reality. We have a man, which is a penis, which is like a positive, and then a woman who's inward, which is like negative, like going inward. And together, those two things, when combined, they equal life. And when you rearrange them in such a way, like the cross, you put the positive and negative signs together, you turn it into a cross, that does not equal life, that actually equals a lie. But there is a correlation that the mind recognizes similar to this bullshit that you see right here. So this was my great awakening, and I started to come up with these very almost familiar images, that I couldn't quite describe, but I knew that they meant something. I knew that they were significant. I started to simplify even more, and we're not going to get into this image right now, but you can see, maybe, if you just don't try and look too far into it, but you just get the gist of it, you start to see how I'm developing this simplistic approach to seeing life. And here's a really good one for you. If some of you are on board and some of you aren't, this is the ones of you who aren't on board. This is an exit sign, okay? We're all familiar with the exit sign. How many of you have ever noticed that the exit sign, turned on its side, is literally an arrow pointing to a house? How many of you have recognized that? Show of hands. Yeah, didn't think so. Probably none of you. And yet, here it is, right in front of our eyes, right? How about that? Exit home. Go home. Exit home. All right, let's do one more. We all know this fucking Illuminati bullshit, pyramid stuff, eye at the top of the pyramid. I got to a point where I'm just like, God damn it, it's not a freaking eyeball. Clearly, like, we're like being played and something's going on. So I flipped it upside down, and lo and behold, that eye looks a lot like a UFO. How about that? It almost looks like a UFO that's going through some sort of vortex. I don't know, could just be me. But these are the things that I started to see, and this is why I created Lost in the Obvious, because I realized that over time, somebody, I don't know who it is, call them the Illuminati, call it the government, call it whatever you want, but I definitely got the impression that I was being played for a fool, that I was being tricked, and I was sick and tired of it. I saw factory farming videos. I learned about, more about nuclear waste and warfare and how there's so much pollution in our water, and I just had enough. So I created Lost in the Obvious. And before I talk more about those details, I want to tell you about how Lost in the Obvious got its name. Let me check in with my notes here to make sure that we are on track. And let me just say that on October 26th of 2012, something insane happened to me. And that's probably going to be the next episode of Originz. But something totally insane happened to me. And it was in that defining moment where I was shriveled up in fear because I knew that this was not a joke and that something divine was truly communicating with me. That's when I knew it was time to get serious and start putting these pieces together. Because whatever was trying to communicate with me had a specific message, and I felt like I was responsible. I was the conduit for delivering that message and putting the pieces together. But Lost in the Obvious, the title didn't necessarily come from, the whole notion of, as humanity, we are lost in the obvious. The notion the title of Lost in the Obvious actually came from a girl that I met. Around the time I got divorced, I moved back to Oregon. I lived with my parents. I started selling my artwork at the Saturday market, and I met a beautiful girl there, and her name was Claire, and she was absolutely stunning. She was Moroccan. I loved Arab women at the time, and she just took my breath away. And her innocence was incredible. She was like 22, 23, 24 years old, and I felt like she had so much to learn about herself and about life. And I was this person with just a little bit more experience that allowed her to deepen her relationship with her creative side. And unfortunately, things didn't work out between us because things got kind of crazy. I was on this path of all this crazy stuff happening, and I tried to talk with her about it and try to make her a part of it. I admit, at the time, I was a little bit crazy. I didn't know really what was going on. I was just trying to make sense of it myself. But one thing I do know is that Claire and I, we loved to make macaroni and cheese. We made macaroni and cheese with bacon and broccoli and chicken, and it was always amazing. But Claire, she was so playful. She was so outstanding. She was like a child. And I love that about adults. When adults can harness their inner playful child, that is just so amazing to me. Like, for the love of God, whoever you are, whoever's listening, please don't grow up. Please don't adult. Please keep your creative innocence afloat. And that's what I definitely loved about Claire. Her creative innocence, and also she was smoking hot. But one thing about Claire is that she was very babied. She was extremely babied by her mom. Her mom was very strict, kind of like Arab culture. And I was kind of trying to break her away from that, and so was my friend Chuck. Chuck and I both saw the potential that Claire didn't see in herself. And Chuck and I thought it would be a good idea to have Claire smoke weed, And Claire would draw stuff like this. Oh no. Where's the picture? Oh. Hold on one second, you guys. Something's going on here. Oh, that's very strange. Okay. Wow, it's very strange. It's not working, and I'm not sure why. Hold on. Let me move these up a different row and see if they turn on a different row. No. Okay, it's legit glitching out. That's okay. We're gonna keep moving. Let's go back to this image real quick. Shit. It's just legit not working. Okay. You know what? We're just gonna keep going with this. We're just gonna keep going. Everything's cool. So Claire would create these stuffed animals, and she would create these cutesy little phone cases. And Chuck and I were just like, you ever smoke some weed? And she's like, no, never smoke weed. And finally we got her to smoke weed because I was trying to inspire her to draw from her soul, and to kind of break away from this cutesy Zentangle designs and shit. So one day she did. We finally got her to vape some weed, and watching her kind of discover this creative side to herself that she never knew existed. I mean, I could literally cry just thinking about it, because she went into her own world and she just started sketching like she was possessed. And what she was coming up with was absolutely profound. The images I was going to show you, but they're just not loading right now, so maybe we'll save it for the next episode of Originz. Just got to go with the flow here. But her artwork went from cutesy little Zentangles to just brilliant, soulful designs, and she was unstoppable. But what had happened is that it was almost too much, too fast for her, when we're sheltered our whole lives, and then we step outside and let's say into the jungle, sure, it's beautiful, but it's also just, it's a lot different than what we're used to. And the way that I was thinking around the time was a lot different than what probably most people are used to. And I tried to bring Claire into that world, and I freaked her out a little bit. And the straw that kind of broke the camel's back between Claire and I was this here. This was kind of the end of our relationship. She had found this picture when we were together, and this is her grandmother holding her, and she was a baby, and the address of her grandmother was 1477. And when Claire saw that, she just she got so freaked out. She's just like, I can't do this, because it was too real. But for me, like, that was just my life. I was in it. I was consumed. I was in this bowl of curiosity and discovery. And Claire wasn't ready. She wasn't ready for that. And I don't blame her, man, because the shit's freaky. It's one thing if you're like, I don't know. It's one thing if you're like, I don't know, maybe like a holistic healer, or you're a spiritual person and you're doing some ayahuasca or some mushrooms, and like you have this profound experience and then you tell about it, right? But you don't have any way to like prove it, or you don't have any like documentation of like how this experience transformed you. Well, imagine being able to document these experiences. Imagine being able to document the divine and prove that it exists. And that's what I'm here to do. And that's why I'm nervous out of my gourd to be here with you guys right now. But we are going to continue this now, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this. But just so you know, it freaked me out. And it freaked Claire out too, because she knew what was going on with the 147 stuff, and I was trying to, telling her, and then she found that picture, and she's like, all right. She's like, this is too much. So here we are. So let's continue. I had mentioned just a moment ago that on October 26th of 2012, I drew this image, and this image changed my life. And I'm going to tell you why in the next episode of Originz. But ultimately, this image led to this image. And this image was the blueprint of a work of art, or a ruin, that I call I. It's just the letter I, and I represents humanity. And after I drew I knew that it was like just a very profound, important work of art, but that it was the very simplified version of really what was on my mind. So I wanted to create a more complex work of art based around I. And so here is the blueprint for Lost in the Obvious, because if you look like the body of Lost in the Obvious, if you look at this shape here, there you go. So just look at the body. It's ultimately like a rectangle, and then it has two X's, which are this barn door. That's what the body of Lost in the Obvious is. And I will tell you why, or maybe draw a little bit more correlation shortly. But Lost in the Obvious is everything that I had to say, everything that was on my mind. My soul was screaming, and I needed to put it into a work of art. And here it is. And you can see how this became this. And if you can't, that's okay. Let me just take a breather here, look at my notes. So when I create works of art around this time, this is literally what I would do. I would say to myself, I would go into the forest, I would just be like, speak through me. You know, I know based on everything that's going on, I know that you're trying to contact me. You're trying to tell me something. I'm not afraid. Just tell me. Just tell me where to go, what to do. Tell me what to draw, and I'll do it. So I would let nature, I would let the experiences that I was having guide me in the direction of how each work of art was created. So when it comes to this piece of art called I, that Lost in the Obvious is ultimately a reflection of, there, if you look in the top left corner, there's very important imagery that I drew, and I wasn't sure if that was the image that I needed to draw or not, but I got confirmation from the universe. Believe it or not, I got confirmation from the universe, and I'm going to show you how right now, okay? I was hanging out with my friend Chuck, and we're going to talk. Chuck's going to get his own Originz episode because he was an outstanding person that gave me a lot of opportunity. But Chuck and I, we would sit together and we would talk, and we would go to the river and we would talk about some crazy shit and try to make sense of everything. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share this video with you, okay? And something really profound happens in this video after 3 minutes. But this is me dialing in this feeling that I have of this, like, I know I need to create this image. And you can see me putting the pieces together. You can see how I kind of hesitate and change things around. But once the image is completed and all the pieces fall into place, something absolutely profound happens. And I'm going to show you what happens right now, but I'm not going to fast forward. I'm just going to let this one ride for a second. And then I'll check back in with you guys in a sec, all right? Much love. All right, did you guys see it? Did you guys see it? Don't worry, I took a screenshot for you, but let's watch it one more time. Check it out. Here we go. Just minding my own business. Boom. Right? It's a bug, it's a bird, it's a plane. No, it's a dragonfly. And here it is right here. Here's a freeze frame of that moment. And that dragonfly flew directly over the center of this vortex. And mind you, this triangle this image that I'm drawing is ultimately a head. I like maybe to call it like the head of some god figure, or it's an illusion. It appears to be this god head, and the UFOs are eyes. The bottom UFO is a mouth, and they're flying over the horizon into this vortex. But as a whole, it kind of looks like this person is being like their mind is being sucked out of their head, and they're around this time. My friend Chuck had told me that apparently at the occurrence of an event horizon, every piece of information that it's ever existed, let's say in that galaxy that's imploding on itself, it rests on that event horizon. And that ball of information can actually be obtained. And once I heard that, I really resonated with it, and I drew this, image. It was like, I didn't draw this image right away. It was a series of like I said, putting the pieces together. But once I drew this image, I really resonated with it. I was like, oh my God, there's something here. I can feel it deep in my soul. Boom! This dragonfly flies right over the top of it. Now, why is this significant? Well, let me show you. Because the dragonfly was only in the shot for 1 second. 1 second, not 2 seconds, not a second and a half. The dragonfly flew directly over the center of this triangle, or this vortex, at 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Now, what are the odds of that? And what's the significance of 3? Some of you might be asking. Well, let's talk about the triangle. How many sides does a triangle have? It has 3. And that's not something that I just kind of made up with on the spot. I'm just like, no, I'm just like, around this time, when the universe is telling me to simplify my approach to things, I don't see numbers as numbers anymore. I see them as shapes. So when I see 3, I think of 3 sides, a triangle. And the fact that this dragonfly flew over at 3 minutes and exactly 47 seconds is what I mean when I get confirmation from the universe that this is the direction that I'm supposed to go in. This is the shit that happens. Let me give you another example. Around the time I was drawing Lost in the Obvious, I started Lost in the Obvious, by the way, on February 8th, and I finished it. Let's see here. Lost in the Obvious. Here we go. February 10th, 2013. That's when I started it, and I finished it in March 7th of 2014. So it took just over a year to finish Lost in the Obvious. But around the time I started it, which was 2/10/13, you can see right here, this is March 13th, which is about a month later. And someone came to me while I was selling my art at the Saturday market. This was my artwork that I sold at the market. This was my little booth when I became a professional artist. Hey, look, there's pretty lights right there. I'll be damned. Well, I was at the market one day, and this guy came by, and he handed me this flyer. And, I just happened to be, on campus that day while this was happening. And actually, no, I think I actually went to this event, and I watched them protest about nuclear war and freedom, and it brought to my attention all these new things that I didn't know, and that really just completely disgusted me. And because I had just started Lost in the Obvious, I was looking for information. Lost in the Obvious is one of those pieces where I'm just like, tell me what I need to draw. Tell me what I need to do, and I'll do it. So I went to this rally, this protest, and I was really inspired. And the beauty is that it inspired me to create one of the limbs on Lost in the Obvious. So you can see this this top left limb is kind of like blank. Well, after I went to that rally, I knew exactly what I had to put in that blank space, and that was the nuclear waste coming out of spilling. Let's see here. Let's see if we can see it right here. There we go. So that's now, look at the top left. It's done now. And if you flip this upside down, it actually becomes, oops, stand by. If you look at that top right limb, and then you flip it upside down, it becomes, look right there on the bottom right now, it becomes a pipe spilling out radioactive waste. So that inspired me to create that. And here's the guy. Here's the guy that handed me the flyer. His name was Thaston. And this is me standing next to him because he came back to the market. And I was like, dude. I'm like, you inspired this, man. Your protest made me realize that this was the fourth and final component of Lost in the Obvious that needed to be implemented. So like, this is how I created art. I would really set myself up to be a conduit and just say, pour the information through me, pour the light through me. It's beautiful. It's truly, truly amazing how this would work. And I hid a lot of stuff inside of Lost in the Obvious. And you're probably not surprised, but I hid the number 147 inside of the body of Lost in the Obvious. There's a lot here. There's a lot to take in. But you can see that this was essentially the original kind of, this one was the blueprint for the head that would be on Lost in the Obvious. And then as I got a little bit more dialed on the message, it became this reversible work of art. So in this way, the face is two eyes and nose and a mouth, and it's like, oh no. But then you flip it upside down, and then it's like the image I drew when I was with Chuck and the dragonfly flew over. You see the correlation, how it's 3 UFOs headed toward a vortex? Same thing here. This is how I gather information to create the art. Now, I'm going to move on to the next and the final closing-ish of this, because it's really special. In like 2009, I discovered this band called The Knife, and it was the coolest music that I'd ever heard. And I was like, holy shit, this is my new favorite band. There's nobody like these people. Like, who is making music like this? Nobody. And I love innovation, I love when people think outside the box. I love when people go against the grain. I love when people don't follow rules. It really tickles my fancy. So The Knife was my new favorite band. And I discovered them in 2009. And in 2010, probably 2010, I got my first knife tattoo. Well, I guess my only knife tattoo. And it's of them in concert. On the bottom is a silhouette of Karen Dreyer, and above is Olaf Dreyer, and they're a brother and sister duo from Sweden, and they make up The Knife. And I love them so much, and I got them tattooed on my body in 2010. Now, let's flash forward to, 2013, and they are coming out with a new album. It's been years since they came out with a new album, and then all of a sudden they're like, boom, we're dropping a new album. And you can see the timeline. Lost in the Obvious was started in February of 2013, and their album came out February, March, 2 months later. And lo and behold, the content of their album, Shaking the Habitual, is actually a direct reflection of Lost in the Obvious, the content of Lost in the Obvious. So my favorite band that I discovered in 2009, got a tattoo of them. Then, they kind of faded away, whatever. And then flash forward, I'm like making all this art and I'm having this great awakening, and I draw this piece of artwork that reflects on, the rich and people having money and corruption and pollution. And then that same year, they just decide to come out with an album that reflects on the same content. You can't make this stuff up. So let's just look right here. Let's take a little peeksy poo, okay? I wrote into ChatGPT. I'm like, tell me what Shaking the Habitual is about. So we look about here. It says power structures, capitalism, nationalism, royalty, hierarchy, institutions preserving inequality, rather than focusing on individual morality. The album asks listeners to examine the systems we participate in every day. Collectivism and individualism. Modern society, people toward competition and isolation. Throughout interviews surrounding the album, they suggested people might be happier sharing resources and living more collectively instead of embracing purely individual lives. So we've got, and then breaking artistic expectations. The album doesn't just talk about breaking habits, it does it. Instead of making another accessible synth pop album like Silent Shout, it includes, 20-minute ambient pieces. And then we dive a little bit deeper, and it says here, if you're really asking on a deeper level, it's really an album about perception. Not perception of a mystical sense, but in the sense of asking, what assumptions are invisible to me? What feels natural only because I've repeated it my whole life? What happens if I deliberately experience the world differently? That's exactly what I was doing when I created Lost in the Obvious. That's what inspired Lost in the Obvious, is my unique way of seeing the world in a whole different way than I was used to. So it says the Knives try to make their listener feel that process, not just understand it intellectually. And then it says it's less like listening to a collection of songs, more like walking through an unsettling art installation where every room asks you to reconsider something you previously took for granted. That's why it's often regarded as the boldest and most diverse electronic albums of 2010. It actually came out in 2013. But what's beautiful is it says, walking through an unsettling installation where every room asks you to reconsider something you previously overlooked, right? Now tell me that is not a freaking exact description of Lost in the Obvious. This is a very unsettling work of art that asks us to challenge what we know about the food that we eat, factory farming, that asks us to what slavery really is. And slavery is not just something that happened in the past, but it's currently happening right now. We look at nuclear warfare, the carelessness of the rich, and we look at how our water is just being polluted, and the top of this, the head, that's the triangle, and it's the UFO. I think that suggests that there is an extraterrestrial presence in this world that does want and desire to communicate with us. But it is in the governments, or whoever the fuck you want to call them, it is in their best interest to keep us on the hush-hush about this, because God knows what'll happen if we learn that reality is so much more than Christianity and Muslims and whatever other religion you want to create. If we discover that life is really something like a video game, and that, aliens control us like conduits or something, something like, I don't know. I think the system would break. I don't think they really want us to know the extent of our potential and what we're capable of, So the beauty is that the Knife and I, we share something. I didn't know how deep my connection to them was in 2009, but when they dropped Shaking the Habitual, I was like, oh my God, what an absolute honor. I mean, just look at the album cover. It's loud, okay? And it's got some guy laughing in the top left corner, and he's got money, and he's like, ha ha ha. And this little grid over to the right side represents the difference a tiny change can make, or the consequence of one action can ripple across the grid. And that's what this is about. It's shaking the habitual so that we create less unnecessary ripples in this world. And here is one of their promos for one of their songs off the album called Full of Fire, and it's just like this woman, and she's just crying. She's just like, oh, the world, we're just such in a bad place. It's tearing me apart, trying not to lose my shit. And they added these really cool simplified, back to the whole simplicity aspect. They're like, how are we going to reach people? Everybody and their mom is like, save the world, do better. Well, how are we going to do this? So they used their voice and their creative expression to create awakening, similar to how I did with Lost in the Obvious. And how I used simple imagery, they used simple imagery of cartoons. And here we have this guy who says, here's like a rich guy on Wall Street who has 7 private jets, and he doesn't understand the impact he's making. Now everybody repeat after me, I don't need this, and then he says, oh, it's just seeing everybody's, face is really all I need. And this is very simple, very, very beautiful. And ultimately what it came down to is they just want people to plant trees. That's what this album was about. It was like, or that's what the message was inside of the album when you opened it up. It's like, look into this whole planting tree thing, and that's how we can fight corruption, by planting trees. I can't go into that, like the detail right now, but I do want to just do a quick little thingamajig and show you guys some of their lyrics. And what's so beautiful about their lyrics is that they're so poetic. Like it's not something that you just know exactly right away, like what they're saying. It makes you think. But this is from one of my favorite songs of theirs called Raging Lung. It says, "Hear my troubles of mine. Can you take me for one last ride? I want to bend my soul again. That's what we do when we get older. Where is your troubled mind? You've got your money, and you've got them because others just can't. There's the lottery about geography. Don't know the hand you're holding, paying someone to put them to bed again. And that's when it hurts. The difference. This is hot blood. And a difference, what a difference a little difference could make. Hear my love sigh. I've got a story that money just can't buy. Western standards, the poverty's profitable. See it slip and slide. Not just one answer, because it's working like parallel lines. It's not that easy when you want it easy. I mean, it's just so dope. And I can't even go down the rabbit hole of like what all that means or what it could mean. But that's the beauty of the knife, is that they never say anything directly to you. They just throw it out there as this abstract work of art, and they let you come to your own conclusion. Even though they have theirs, they're not throwing it in your face. And that's what I love about the knife. And around this time, I had finished Lost in the Obvious. I had finally completed it. And a really good friend of mine who I was helping, he had injured himself pretty severely. He said, I'm so grateful for everything that you've done for me, the way you've helped me, because it's been a real struggle. And he said, I'll get you anything you want, just to say thanks. And I'm like, all right, well, let me think about it. And I finally thought about it, and I'm like, okay, here's what I want. I want to go to Sweden, and I want to give this original artwork to the knife, because they're performing in Stockholm, Sweden, their last concert ever in their hometown. That was my dream. I want to bring the artwork to Sweden, and I want to give it to him. And my homie Chuck said, all right, done. So your boy wrapped up Lost in the Obvious in a box, got it framed, and flew to Sweden to see the knife in their very last concert. And it was amazing. And I was on a mission. I think I was only in Europe for like 2 days. I literally just went there to give them this art as a way to say thank you. Literally. This is their some images from their concert, And again, the knife is only 2 people, but there's so many people up here because they don't want the attention to be on them. They're not concerned with gender. They're not concerned with, is this a male or a female, what this song is about. They just want to do an unapologetic expression of self. And to me, there's nothing cooler, there's nothing better than that. So I went to Sweden, and I was a little bit young and a little bit dumb and a little bit anxious. But one night I heard them, the night before the concert, I heard them practicing because I was staying in a hotel right by the venue where they were playing. I heard them practicing, and I brought the artwork outside, and there was a security guard with this fucking badass guard dog. And thinking back, I probably wouldn't have worn my pajamas. Yeah, shouldn't have worn my pajamas to that moment. I was very lax, spoiled, rotten, really. And I was like, hey, I want to give this to the knife. When they come out, I'm going to give this to him. And he was very adamant. He's like, look, they're not going to meet anybody when they come out. And it was in that moment, like they were on the other side of the wall. I could hear them. It's like, I made it. I can do this. And he's like, and it's like, look, if I give this to you, can you just make sure it gets to them? And he's like, yeah, And then the management came, and I showed him the art, and they were just like, yeah, we'll definitely make sure it gets to him. So I guess mission accomplished, right? I went to the concert the next day, and I kind of still wasn't satisfied. I wanted to know more, like if they had actually received it. And the security stopped me. Everybody was leaving the concert. I was going into the concert, and security was just like, you gotta go. Because, they had already probably spread word about me that I was some crazy fan that flew across, with this art. And looking back, I would have probably done things differently, but I did get the artwork to them. I definitely did want to meet them and get a picture with them and be like, yeah, just like I did, getting on Kill Tony, just like I did getting on stage with Atmosphere, just like I did, getting with Pretty Lights. I just have this relentless passion to just do what I want and fucking create it and be successful, Yeah. So you guys, we have to wrap this up soon. I think this is about to cut out. So I just want to end this video by showing you a picture of the box that it was wrapped in, and then just say, thanks. And you can see how each one of these limbs, this reflects on slavery. These are like ghosts attached to a cigarette. And then this is factory farming. There's hormones, there's an egg that hatches. The chicken comes out of the egg, it's immediately processed, turned into chicken McNuggets. This is the nuclear warfare. This is a rocket, a nuke, just rocketing toward this beautiful foundation. And then this other side, this is a tiki totem that has been scalped, and coming out of its head as a representation of why it has been scalped. You have money, you have the indigenous cultures dripping out of deforestation. You have this, radioactive waste is kind of what I refer to as the hand. If you look at the hand, it kind of looks like radioactive waste. And yeah, lost in the obvious. Gosh, I really hope that this has been insightful. And I do want to do a deep dive on this work of art. And I want to talk to you more about Chuckster and he and I's relationship and the blueprint of Lost in the Obvious, and why I think it is a simple image that I channeled from the divine that I believe can change the world. I genuinely believe that. And it feels so good to tell you guys this story. I hope that I have drawn some awesome correlations for you. And I hope that I've piqued your curiosity a little bit. And I think I just want to end this video by saying, don't get lost in the obvious. Don't lose your awareness. Even if things are hard to accept, like the food that we eat. We don't want to see little baby cows get thrown in the garbage and then their mother used for milk. We don't want to see little baby pigs get castrated in front of their mother We don't want to see pigs suffering in cages that we can't fit into. None of us want to see that. But still, we eat the food. But my message for you, or what I encourage you to do, is don't be ignorant. Be aware. Awareness is important. Even if you still eat meat, which I do, the fact that you know what's actually going on and you're not afraid to just tell it like it is, that takes courage. And it's important to stand your ground when it comes to slavery, the tobacco industry. If you're a cigarette smoker, just admit you're a slave to the tobacco industry. I'm a slave to the food industry, and it's so addictive, and that's also a form of slavery. And we as a society, we cannot get lost in the obvious, because once we lose our awareness, then we become sheeps in our mind, and we just do what we're told, and we become hopeless, and we think that there is no future for mankind, when actually there is, because there's a lot more of us than there are of them. Them, the people who have built this corruption on this beautiful foundation and planet that we call Earth. They will not win. And they are doing everything they can to win right now. But we're not going to let them win. You know why? Because we're not going to get lost in the obvious. That is all for now. Thank you guys so much for being here. Boom! Another episode of Originz in the books. I love you guys so much. Peace, love, and light refractions. I love you guys. Peace out.